Hey, what's up, everyone? Today we're going to be starting a series on Japanese black pine decandling. And so I'm going to go through a number of different things, and each video in this series is going to cover sort of a separate part of this very storied technique for Japanese black pines. And the first one is going to be basically how to read your Japanese black pine. This tree is one of my 15-year-old batch. It is now early June here in San Francisco, and the first step in decandling is actually not even touching the tree. The first step in decandling is to assess the health of the tree and determine exactly what work needs to be done. Because not all trees need to be decandled, but in this case, I've selected one for this purpose that does need to be decandled. So in decandling, what we're trying to do is contain the growth of the tree and really force the tree to make more compact growth and to back bud as close back into the trunk and inner branches as possible. Now, in order to do that, we need to understand how Japanese black pine bud after they're cut. And there's two sites that they bud at. One is at the base of the new candle, basically at the node point, where the bud formed during the winter, and then the new growth elongates during the spring and sends out new needles. So if you cut just past the base, leaving about 1/8 of an inch of growth, then you activate what are called adventitious buds. Those are kind of a ring of buds that are right at the base of this growth, and those will pop out relatively quickly and give you shorter needles as they grow out through the rest of the season and finally harden off around November here in the Bay Area. The other kind of bud that you're going to get is needle buds, and if you take this same branch and you decandle it behind the node, in other words, you cut off that ring of adventitious buds, then you're going to force the tree to bud back further, and that means that it will likely send out buds from the center of each one of these pairs of needles. So there's sometimes a little bit of misunderstanding about about pulling all the needles the prior fall. So if you blanketly pull all the old needles and leave just the past year's growth, sometimes you can end up with not enough needles to force needle buds to cut back to. All right, so in this case, the tree is nice and healthy. I've got good extensions here. I've got good color in my needles. There's just a teeny bit of yellowing in the base of the needle here, which means that it's probably getting a little bit too much water. And that means I need to kind of back off, especially after decandling, because it will absorb less water after the decandling process. But I want to pull you guys in close and take a look at a couple of details. All right, so this is an example of a branch that was decandled at the node last year. So this would have been the decandling point last year. Then this is the summer growth from last year, and this is this spring's growth extending from it. And you can see these are relatively strong for a tree that's, this full. You can get much longer and stronger candles, especially on young trees. And then right next to this is a cut point where the tree last summer was decandled behind the node. So you can see that the growth that came out last summer, there's like a much shorter extension here and a much shorter or much smaller whorl of needles. And then consequently, these extensions have not extended as far as the ones that were decandled at the node. So basically, this is just part of the process of reading and understanding what the tree's condition is before you start working on it. I'm gonna still decandle both of these, but I'm gonna use the opposite technique that I did last summer. In other words, with these super strong ones, because they're stronger, I'm gonna decandle them behind the nodes and force that more compact growth. That decandling behind the nodes and the emergence of needle buds takes longer than the emergence of the adventitious buds at the node. So by decandling the weak ones at the node and the strong ones behind the node, I'm actually kind of balancing out the imbalance that I created last year when I did the opposite with these buds.